It happened during a Boy Scout campout when I was 15. My original tent partner had backed out of the trip at the very last minute, calling to say he couldn't make it. That meant I was left to set up and sleep in my tent entirely on my own. At first, I didn't mind. I told myself it would be fine. More space, more freedom. By the time we returned to camp from a long, exhausting day of hiking, the sun was already dipping low behind the tree line. The shadows in the forest grew longer, darker, and the air took on that heavy, cool feeling that always comes before nightfall. I trudged back to my designated spot and began unpacking my tent. But as the light faded into dusk, every task seemed to take twice as long. It's amazing how quickly the woods transform when darkness begins to settle. What had been cheerful trails and open meadows just hours before now looked like tunnels of black branches and whispering leaves. I was still wrestling with tent poles in near darkness when one of the other scouts noticed my struggle. He wandered over and, without much conversation, helped me finish the job. I was grateful, but also aware of how alone my little patch of ground felt. No tents nearby, no warm light spilling from campfires, just me and the surrounding trees. Dinner that night was the usual camp fare: overcooked hot dogs and charred marshmallows, followed by the cliched but still enjoyable round of scary stories around the fire. The flames flickered against our faces as the scoutmasters took turns weaving tales about shadowy figures in the woods, ghostly hikers, and forgotten cabins. We all laughed at the end of each story, pretending to shrug off the chill that lingered in the air. By the time we were told to head to our tents, I was actually looking forward to having mine all to myself. I stretched out in my sleeping bag, listened to the crickets and the distant murmur of voices fading into silence, and drifted quickly into sleep. I don't know what woke me first: the faint crunch of dry leaves, or the unmistakable sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps. They weren't passing by. They were circling my tent, slowly, methodically. At first, I assumed it was another scout, maybe heading out to relieve himself. But then I remembered our scoutmasters had instructed us to pitch our tents far apart, to experience real wilderness camping. My nearest fellow scout was far enough away that I wouldn't expect to hear him walking around me, and certainly not in repeated, deliberate circles. The stomping continued, slow and steady. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice sounded too loud in the stillness. There was no answer. Instead, the steps moved away, disappearing into the trees. I lay there, tense, debating whether to unzip the tent and see who it was. But something inside me whispered not to. I stayed put, trying to slow my breathing, convincing myself it was just someone messing around. Then the sound returned, louder, closer. Whoever or whatever it was walking around my tent again. My pulse quickened, and irritation pushed through my fear. I decided I'd had enough. I sat up, unzipped the tent door, and stepped out into the cold night air. I expected to see a fellow scout grinning at me, ready to gloat about scaring me. Instead, I found myself staring at a man I had never seen before. He was tall, at least 6.5 feet, and looked to be in his mid-30s. His face was pale in the moonlight, and his eyes locked on mine with an expression that made my stomach twist. Then, slowly, he raised one long finger to his lips, the gesture deliberate, almost playful. I froze. My throat tightened. I couldn't even scream. The sound of my own heartbeat roared in my ears. Then instinct took over. I spun on my heel and sprinted toward my scoutmaster's tent, my voice finally breaking loose in a panicked scream. My scoutmaster met me halfway, startled by my shouting. Breathless, I stammered out what I'd seen. His face went pale. He called over another scoutmaster, grabbed one of the camp's hunting rifles, and the two of them rushed to my tent. The man was gone, but his presence lingered in the boot prints stamped deep into the earth, circling my tent again and again. That night, the scoutmasters ordered everyone to move their tents close together, so close they nearly touched. No one slept well. The next morning, we packed up and cut the trip short. I haven't been camping since. I don't think I ever will.